Hey there, it's me Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the description.
You can pick something if you want. Mom's voice was casual, like she wasn't paying much attention. But Ginger felt the words settle in her chest like an unexpected weight. She swallowed. I don't need anything. Mom smiled. I didn't ask if you needed something. I asked if you wanted something. Ginger's fingers curled into her jacket. Wanting things was dangerous. Wanting meant expecting, and expecting meant disappointment. She hesitated too long, and Mom just nodded, like she understood, like she wasn't going to push. But before they left the store, she grabbed a pack of peanut butter cups and set them quietly in the cart. Ginger's throat felt tight. She didn't say anything. But later, when they got home, she found them sitting on the counter with a note. Just in case. Mom. Ginger stared at it for a long time. She didn't throw the note away. She folded it and put it in her nightstand, right next to the first peanut butter cup she had saved. The next few days passed like that. Quiet. Slow. A series of small moments, each one nudging her further away from the idea of leaving. She played cards with June and Iris one evening, pretending she didn't want to win but feeling smug when she did. She helped Julie carry groceries inside, even though she rolled her eyes the whole time. She sat in the living room when the others watched movies, not because she cared about the film, but because the sound of their laughter felt nice, familiar, like something she could get used to. She didn't know how it had happened, didn't know when it had happened. But somehow, without meaning to, she had stopped looking at the front door like an exit. She had stopped waiting for the moment everything fell apart. She had stopped preparing for the worst. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe that this wasn't the worst at all. Ginger wasn't staying. She wasn't. She was just still here. That was different. At least, that's what she told herself. She still woke up every morning half expecting something to go wrong. Half expecting someone to tell her she had overstayed her welcome, that this had all been some kind of cruel trick. But no one ever did. Instead, Pip would toss a pillow at her head and grumble about how she snored. She didn't. Instead, Mom would greet her at breakfast with a soft, morning, sweetheart, like it was a given that Ginger would be there. Instead, Julie would push an extra cup of coffee toward her without asking if she wanted one. Like they had already decided she belonged. Like they had stopped waiting for her to leave. Like they knew she wasn't going to. And that scared her more than anything, because she wasn't sure if they were wrong. Or if they were right. The days slipped by too easily. And that was the problem. Because it was easy. Too easy. She shouldn't have been able to fall into step with this life so effortlessly. Shouldn't have been able to sit on the couch with the others like she had been doing it for years. Shouldn't have been able to wake up in the same bed, wear the same clothes, and start thinking of this place as what? Home? No, she wasn't calling it that. She wasn't. But the word had been creeping closer in the back of her mind, whispering at the edges of her thoughts. And that was dangerous. Because home was temporary. Home was something you lost. She wasn't going to lose something again. Not after all the time she had barely survived it before. So no, this wasn't home. Not yet. Not ever. But then there were the little things. The things that made it harder to pretend she wasn't getting comfortable. Like how she had started knowing the way the house worked, when the heater clicked on at night, when the floors creaked in certain spots, when Mom would hum to herself while making tea. Like how she had started recognizing the habits of the girls around her, how Julie always left her shoes near the front door but never in the same spot, how Iris never actually finished a cup of coffee but kept making them anyway, how Pip stole snacks from the kitchen and left them in random places like she was hiding food for a winter that would never come. And worst of all, Ginger had started to let herself be noticed. She didn't just exist in the background anymore. She spoke during meals. She argued with Pip over stupid things. She let June talk her into helping with laundry, even though she pretended to hate it. She let herself laugh. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Because laughter meant she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. And she didn't know how to handle that. One evening, Mom found her in the library. Ginger had been sitting there for over an hour, Little Women open in her lap, staring at the same paragraph without actually reading it. She had been lost in her own head, caught in the middle of another internal war she didn't know how to fight. Mom didn't say anything at first. She just walked in, settled into the chair across from her, and started knitting. The fire crackled between them, filling the silence with warmth. Ginger shifted in her seat. Mom didn't push. She never did. But somehow, that made it worse. Because Ginger wanted her to push. Wanted someone to tell her what to do, to make the decision for her, so she wouldn't have to keep battling herself every second of the day. But Mom just sat there waiting. Like she always did. Finally, Ginger exhaled, voice quiet. I don't know how to stay. Mom didn't look up from her knitting. That's okay. Ginger's throat tightened. I don't know how to want to stay, she said, a little stronger this time. Mom glanced at her then, smiling softly. You already do, sweetheart. Ginger clenched her jaw. She wanted to argue. Wanted to say I don't. But the words wouldn't come. Because it wasn't true. She did want to stay. She just didn't know how. Mom set her knitting down, folding her hands in her lap. There's no rulebook for this, Ginger, she said gently. No step-by-step guide on how to let yourself belong somewhere. Ginger swallowed hard. Mom leaned forward slightly. But you do belong. Ginger let out a sharp breath, staring down at her lap. I don't know how to belong. Mom smiled. That's the easy part. You just stay. Ginger's chest ached. Because that wasn't the easy part. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. But she didn't say that. She just nodded, swallowing against the lump in her throat. And Mom didn't say anything else. She just picked up her knitting again. And let Ginger sit with the truth. That night, Ginger sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her knapsack. It was still packed. Still ready. Still waiting for her to decide. She reached for it. Her fingers brushed against the strap. And then, she let go. For the first time since she had arrived, she let her bag stay by the door without touching it. She didn't unpack. She wasn't ready for that. But she didn't check it either. Didn't go through her money, didn't make sure her few belongings were still where she had left them. She just let it be. And somehow, that felt like the biggest step of all. The next morning, when Pip woke up, she blinked sleepily at Ginger and muttered, Holy crap, you're awake before me. Ginger rolled her eyes. It's not that shocking. Pip yawned. It is shocking. You sleep like you're recovering from war. Ginger smirked. Maybe I am. Pip snorted, flopping back onto her pillow. If I close my eyes for 2 more minutes, don't let me fall asleep. Ginger crossed her arms. Why would I do that? Pip cracked when I open. Because you like me, obviously. Ginger shoved her pillow off the bed. Pip cackled. And Ginger. Ginger smiled. Like it was normal. Like she wasn't planning to run. Like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't going to. And for the first time, that thought didn't terrify her. Ginger didn't leave. Not that day. Not the next. And the longer she stayed, the less she could lie to herself. She had stopped looking at the door like it was an escape route. Stopped keeping her knapsack within reach. Stopped telling herself that this was temporary. Because the truth was, she didn't want to leave anymore. And that scared her more than anything. The house felt different now. Not because anything had changed, but because she had. She still woke up expecting something to go wrong. But when she rolled over and saw Pip drooling into her pillow, gross, when she heard the soft murmur of voices downstairs, when she smelled coffee and something warm baking in the kitchen, she realized that the fear had started to fade. She still braced for the worst. But not as much. She still felt like an outsider. But not as much. The walls she had built weren't gone. Not yet. But there were cracks. And that was new. That was terrifying. Okay, serious question, Pip said, tossing a grape at Ginger from across the kitchen table. Ginger caught it without thinking. Don't throw food at me. Pip grinned. I'm testing your reflexes. Stop. Pip tossed another. Ginger scowled, catching it again. I will murder you. Pip cackled. Mom walked in, raising an eyebrow. Do I even want to know? Ginger sighed, tossing the grape back at Pip. No. Pip caught it in her mouth and winked. Mom just shook her head, amused, before walking over to the counter to knead dough. Ginger watched her hands move, steady, practiced. There was something comforting about it. Something solid. She wasn't used to that. She wasn't used to seeing hands that built things instead of breaking them. The thought made her chest tight. She turned back to Pip. You were going to ask me something. Pip grinned. Right. Serious question. Ginger rolled her eyes. This should be good. Pip leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. What's your deal with peanut butter cups? Ginger froze. Her fingers twitched. Because that was unexpected. She should have seen it coming. But she hadn't. And now she was staring at Pip, heartbeat stuttering in her chest, trying to figure out how to answer. Pip didn't push. She just waited. And for some reason, that made it worse. Ginger swallowed. It's not a deal, she muttered. Pip raised an eyebrow. You hoard them. I don't. Yeah, you do. Pip smirked. Every time we go to the store, you get some. But you never eat them. Ginger stiffened. Because she hadn't realized anyone noticed. Pip tilted her head. So, what's the story? Ginger clenched her jaw. She could lie. She could roll her eyes, say who cares, brush it off like it didn't matter. That's what she would have done before. But now? Now, there was an ache in her chest. A weight pressing against her ribs. Because someone had noticed. And she didn't know how to deal with that. She stared at the table. At her hands. At nothing. Then, quietly, she said, they remind me of something. Pip didn't speak. Didn't interrupt. Didn't demand an explanation. So Ginger kept talking. I used to save them, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. For bad days. Pip's smirk faded. Ginger swallowed. When I was little, my mom. She stopped. She hadn't meant to say that. Hadn't meant to go there.
Please subscribe my channel for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.